Most of us are 90s kids here at Eurogamer, so we're all massively excited for the upcoming 16-bit homage Terminator 2D No Fate, but it has to be said Terminator 2 has had more video game spin-offs than you've had hot dinners. And it's no wonder, it's the greatest sci-fi action movie of the 1990s, a decade that was absolutely rammed with all-timer sci-fi action movies, most of which had rubbish video game tie-ins when they were released. Rushed, underfunded, often based on very little input from the filmmakers, some of gaming's most infamous cash grabs have been forgettable or downright terrible movie tie-ins. And it's worth mentioning that movies based on video games used to be notoriously cack as well, but in recent years the relationship between movies and video games has moved on from a cold, transactional sneer to a more warm and friendly collaboration. Polish developer Teyon has spun gold in the last few years by giving us the proper Future War T2 sequel we all wanted, and by making the only good sequel to RoboCop 2. Or RoboCop for that matter, with the sublime Deus Ex style romp through near-future Detroit that was RoboCop Rogue City. But when studios inevitably get bored of raking over the coals of famous cyborgs, what other classic 90s movies deserve a decent, modern video game adaptation? Well, we've got some ideas and we're about to tell you some. And the reasons? There are no reasons. Who needs reasons when you've got Trainspotting? I got you, no really. Number 1, Total Recall. Author Philip K. Dick's influence on pop culture and video games is immeasurably vast, beyond the fact that he wrote the novel that Blade Runner is based on, and about 1 in every 5 video games is overtly Blade Runner-esque. You can find traces of his particular brand of trippy, malleable realities and techno-dystopianism in such diverse works as The Stanley Parable, Disco Elysium, and Cyberpunk 2077. Not to mention Californium, the award-winning art house mashup of 3 concurrent overlapping realities that is a direct homage to the author, and is probably a more faithful interpretation of his signature themes than any of the various adaptations of his work. Especially Total Recall, the absolutely daft 1990 Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle by RoboCop director Paul Verhoeven that uses Philip K. Dick's novella We Remember It For You wholesale as the basis for a wild, retro-futuristic action movie that's stuffed to the gills with classic, iconic moments.
Take this thing out of the case and stick it up your nose.
And it is a great film. The audience is never quite sure whether or not Douglas Quaid's secret agent adventure across Neo-USA and the vast Martian colonies is a genuine conspiracy accidentally stumbled upon by implanted memory merchants, or the completely made-up fantasy he is shown ordering and paying for at the start of the film. A Total Recall video game wouldn't necessarily have to adapt the story of the movie, but it could play around with the notion of false memories as a detective game centered around the idea of sifting through someone's brain trying to uncover a buried truth, or having to determine which of a person's memories are genuine or implanted falsehoods.
That was too much. Could feel the guy's pain.
Cyberpunk 2077 plays briefly with this sort of idea in its memorable brain dance sequence in the opening hours of the game, although sadly never really expands on the idea outside of this heavily scripted scene, which might be because of playtesting, to be honest, because most people hate that bit. Meanwhile, small C cyberpunk thriller Observer, starring Blade Runner alumni Rutger Hauer, revolves around the idea of hacking people's cybernetic brains in order to reconstruct their final moments. There are certainly plenty of ideas in Total Recall and its source material that would make an interesting basis for a video game, not just in terms of its story, but concepts that can be directly interpreted as game mechanics. And we'd love to see someone give it a proper go, because the rubbish tie-in platformers we got back in the day don't really do the movie justice, like, at all. And the less said about the Colin Farrell remake, the better, right? Number 2, 12 Monkeys.
You're a very good observer, Cole.
12 Monkeys, like Monkey Island, isn't actually about monkeys, but unlike Monkey Island, it's a mind-bending treatise on predeterminism that spans pre- and post-apocalyptic timelines and is widely considered one of the smartest time travel-based movies ever made, not least because of its almost nihilistic predestination paradox model of time travel in which the bad future can't actually be averted. Is everything inevitable? Does free will exist in a closed loop? None of these questions are asked or answered by Sonic CD, the largely forgotten Mega CD Sonic game that is set across multiple timelines, splitting into good or bad futures depending on Sonic's actions in the pre-Robotnik version of each level. So that's not how to do a 12 Monkeys video game necessarily, but it is interesting that this wild, reactive concept existed all the way back in 1993, and is sadly now largely consigned to the dustbin of of history remembered only by furries on DeviantArt.
I'm Fia Quinn. I'm a time traveller.
One of the smartest time travel games in recent years is point-and-click adventure Old Skies by Wadjet Eye, a grand episodic adventure set across multiple time periods with a hub future in which time travel itself, much like space travel today, is a bizarre tourist industry for the super rich, controlled by extremely sus and vaguely dystopic corporations. There's not really any choice and consequence stuff going on here because the events of the story are fixed, but it still does a lot of interesting things with the time travel concept, such as a bizarre, almost Philip K. Dick-esque future where reality itself is entirely fluid and subject to the whims of a constantly shifting timeline where people who are chrono-locked, that is protected from changes in the past, find themselves interacting with the lives of dozens of their alternate selves in different realities. However, recent Bloober Team original Kronos: The New Dawn is perhaps the closest thing we have to a real adaptation of 12 Monkeys, given that the developers have cited it as a direct inspiration, and that it's all about salvaging the past in order to save a grim, ruined future. And after talking about grim dystopias for a few minutes, which is quite triggering as a British person, I really feel like lightening up. So, number 3, Demolition Man.
He's a criminal the likes of which you have never seen. In a bad time, he was the worst.
Demolition Man might be a bit of a daft Sly Stallone vehicle, best known for a gag about how an oafish brute from the past doesn't know how to clean his arse properly after being displaced into a dystopian future, which I like to think is a commentary on how it feels to be a Westerner on their first trip to Japan and getting a blast on the smashing robot toilets they've got over there. God, honestly, I've never felt so fresh before or since.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells.
But Demolition Man at least flips the ruined future gleaming past trope by having a man from the troubled, decadent, violent 1990s thaw out in a sanitised, almost bland future where all the problems of the present are largely solved to the point where the police don't really have anything to do apart from eat Taco Bell. In that sense, it's sort of like moving to Guildford. However, it is obviously a world rife with hidden inequality, ripe for exploitation by a scenery-chewing Wesley Snipes in what is honestly one of his best ever performances.
6 of you, such nice, tidy uniforms. Oh, I'm so scared.
Demolition Man is a great film. Absolutely perfect, we think, for a quasi-sequel in the style of RoboCop Rogue City. In the same way that game let you explore an anachronistic future where the 80s effectively never ended, the light and dark worlds of Demolition Man would be just as exciting to explore, perhaps on a new case to hunt down even more 90s criminals who've managed to escape from the ISO cubes with their global hypercolored t-shirts and sideways baseball caps. To be honest, most people from the 90s would be considered criminals now just by stepping out of the house. Number 4, The Fifth Element.
And this is?
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Listen, cards on the table here. The Fifth Element might have been my favourite film when I was a kid. Die Hard meets Leon in an impossible comic book spacefaring future. It's such a weird film where the budget and cast of a Hollywood blockbuster collides with the left field sensibilities of European art house cinema, inspired in no small part by the works of Alejandro Jodorowsky and Jean Mobius Girard, specifically the graphic novel The Inkle, which is a foundational work of European comics set across a sprawling, grotesquely beautiful galaxy of conspiracy, criminality, and profound existentialism. If you like comics and you haven't read it, you should read it, because it's a sight better than the superhero piss you're into, you Wayne. Anyway, listen, The Fifth Element is more or less a vast escort mission where jaded, unshaven, reluctant hero A has to deliver naive but not helpless key to the future pixie woman B to location C in order to save Universe D from ravaging threat E. Yes, I'm invoking The Last of Us here, but from Eco to Bioshock Infinite to Dad of War, the trope of a game-length escort mission is long established, and The Fifth Element, with its potential for meaningful MacGuffin hunting exploration, enticing visuals and diverse gameplay, seems like an excellent basis for a game that I'm imagining would be something along the lines of Enslaved Odyssey to the West, but smashed into Beyond Good and Evil. Remember that? I don't know, I'm just saying stuff, I'm not actually making the thing. But you know, if someone did do this, it would at least atone for the absolute insult that is the Fifth Element video game tie-in on PS1, which looked more like a Duke Nukem spin-off than anything resembling the movie. Number 5, Stargate. Stargate, na 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 na. 1994 seminal collaboration between Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin is one of the most quintessentially 90s things imaginable. Riding a wave of popular interest in ancient Egypt that continues to this day, Stargate is essentially a movie adaptation of the highly controversial Chariots of the Gods hypothesis that assumes ancient Africans couldn't have been clever enough to build the Great Pyramids at Giza and therefore must have had help from some kind of technologically advanced aliens with space cranes or something. This is a theory based on little more than looking at a pile of rocks in the desert and loudly wondering how the hell they got there, with no interest in the actual answer. They figured it out over years and years of trial and error and iteration. You see it. If you look at the older pyramids, you can see how they figured it. It's right there. Oh. Stargate, for its part, at least imagines that the aliens in question weren't benevolent god beings innocently turning the Nile Delta into an intergalactic Wilkin break.
Who the hell translated this?
I did.
But actually a bunch of tyrannical lizard squid freaks whom the Egyptians eventually booted off Earth, but not before the Goa'uld system lords had unwittingly seeded them across the galaxy to found a loose interstellar civilization of human beings, thriving out there in the glimmering black with virtually no memory of their home planet. Now, connoisseurs will know that I'm actually talking about the lore of the television programme Stargate SG-1, a small screen spin-off that stands as a rare example of a TV show based on a movie that's actually better than the movie, and by a significant margin. So that's the Stargate I'm actually talking about here, because I'm cheating. Several attempts have been made to adapt Stargate SG-1 into video games. The franchise is littered with cancelled projects: the Stargate Worlds MMO, various third and first person shooters, an online card trading game, and a weird episodic iPad adventure game that starred the original cast and actually had reasonable production values for the time, but it was stupid rubbish that sucked and nobody remembers it, and it's basically lost media now, just like all those deleted episodes of Doctor Who that you're definitely not going to watch even if they do find them. The best SG-1 video game to date by a huge distance is Stargate Timekeepers, a commando-style real-time tactics game set just after season 7 of the show, which puts you in control of an SG team with various complementary talents and tasks you with firing about the galaxy, doing wee missions. And you know what? A lot of people scoffed at this, but that's actually an inspired use of the license. SG teams in the show are multidisciplined teams, usually with a commander, a tank, a scientist, and a bookworm, a group of characters with a complementary set of skills distributed between them. And Stargate Timekeepers is a decent crack at a shadow tactics style game within the Stargate universe that I'd certainly recommend to any fans of the show who prefer all this sneaking around to a straight fight. But I do understand why the knee-jerk reaction of Stargate fans was unenthusiastic, because the Stargate universe has such boundless potential for an epic Mass Effect style game. Think about it. It's a squad-based action RPG with a hub base where you get to visit loads of different worlds while you're battling an existential threat to galactic civilization. And that's admittedly a bit pie in the sky. Even properties as massive as Star Wars and Star Trek can't guarantee ROI on a AAA game. I mean, Star Trek hasn't even tried for decades. Star Wars Outlaws was, sadly for various reasons not actually related to its quality, a flop. And Stargate SG-1, as much as I love it, was never as big or beloved as those two things, which explains why its video game prospects have never really taken off. However, with the upcoming The Expanse Osiris Reborn game from Alcat Studios, there remains some hope that a lesser known sci-fi property can justifiably get turned into a Mass Effect style game for horrid wee goblins like me to lose themselves in. It's not impossible, it's just very unlikely. Just like your prospects for finding true love and meaningful connection with real people in the rapidly declining tech dystopia from which we all howl impotently into the dark void. Good night.
Now is a great time to score some incredible games through Humble Choice. Live now through to October 7th, you can grab WWE 2K25, Destiny 2 Legacy Collection, The Plucky Squire, Return to Monkey Island, and more. Whether you're building up your backlog or discovering something new, this is the perfect time to pick up these fan favourites. Plus, every purchase supports a good cause, with this month's featured charity being Team Rubicon. Get a curated mix of PC games every month, all for just £11.49 a month.